Welcome back to my channel. Today's story unfolds inside the Coconino County Courthouse, where whispers replaced oxygen, and every sound carried the weight of betrayal. The name Brown, once a symbol of love, faith, and family unity on national television, had now become the headline for scandal. The courtroom was thick with tension. Even the wooden benches seemed to creak with anticipation. All rise. The bailiff's voice shattered the silence. The Superior Court of Arizona was now in session. Mary Brown stood tall, unflinching, her gaze locked on one man, the man she once built her world around. Kody Brown. He sat across the room, jaw clenched, fingers interlocked like a man bracing for impact. The judge entered, the air cracked with formality. Cameras weren't allowed, but if they were, every lens in America would have turned toward Mary, the woman who had always smiled through her silence, now ready to speak through her strength. The clerk's voice echoed, "Case number 25310, Mary Brown versus Kody Brown. Property fraud, concealment of assets, and violation of marital contract." A wave of gasps swept the courtroom. Pens scratched like whispers. A woman in the back leaned to her friend, murmuring, "Isn't this about that sister wives land?" Mary's attorney, Abigail Ross, rose with calm fire. "Your Honor, this isn't merely about land. This is about deceit. It's about a man who used religion and family as his disguise for control." Kody leaned toward his attorney, muttering through gritted teeth, "She's making too much of it." His lawyer whispered back, "Then it shouldn't be difficult to prove otherwise." But deep down, Kody knew. He remembered every late-night email, every hidden transfer, every whispered, "Trust me." Mary sat motionless. No wedding ring. Just a small turquoise bracelet. A quiet declaration of freedom. The judge looked between them. "Are both sides ready to continue?" "Yes, Your Honor," came from both tables. "Then let's begin." A sharp bang of the gavel split the room. Mary stood. "Your Honor, I'd like to call Christine Brown to the witness stand." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. "Christine Brown?" The wife who walked away. The woman who broke from the faith, from the man, from the illusion. Kody froze. "What is she doing here?" he hissed. Christine entered calmly, dressed in a gray blazer, no notes, no pretense, just truth. The energy in the room shifted instantly. This wasn't reality TV anymore. This was real life. The bailiff approached. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" Christine lifted her chin. "I do." For a moment, Mary watched her, two women once divided by one man, now united by pain. "Mrs. Brown," Abigail began, "when did you first suspect something was wrong with the Coyote Pass land?" Christine's voice trembled just enough to show she still felt it. "It was about a year before I left the family. Kody told us the land would be split evenly, that we'd all have our own place. But when I saw a document left on the printer, I realized the title listed only Kody and Robin." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Mary looked down, remembering every time Kody said, "Trust me, I'll handle it." Abigail leaned in. "Were any of the other wives, including my client, ever informed of this transfer?" Christine didn't hesitate. "No, we were told it was still pending. But it wasn't. It was done behind our backs." Kody's attorney jumped up. "Objection, speculation." "Overruled," the judge said firmly. "The witness will proceed." Christine's eyes locked on Kody. "He said we were a team. But the truth is, he made that team a lot smaller." Kody's fingers tapped furiously on the table. His face flushed red. Control, his favorite weapon, was slipping through his fingers. Abigail nodded. "Thank you, Christine." No further questions. As Christine walked away, the air turned heavy again. Even the clerk avoided eye contact. Mary took a deep breath. For the first time in years, she wasn't scared of Kody Brown. The judge turned to her. "Mrs. Brown, do you have another witness?" "Yes, Your Honor," she replied softly. "But first, I have evidence to submit." From her folder, Mary withdrew pages of emails, handwritten notes, and late-night messages, proof that love had been used as a weapon, and trust had been rewritten in secret. Kody's face drained of color. He recognized the handwriting, his own. Mary's voice trembled. But it didn't break. But it didn't break. What you're about to hear isn't just a courtroom testimony. It's the unmasking of years of silence, manipulation, and betrayal inside one of America's most controversial families. Mary Brown stood tall, her trembling hands clutching the stack of papers that had taken her years to gather. Documents that represented not just ink and signatures, but truth itself. "These aren't just pieces of paper, Your Honor," she said, her voice firm but laced with pain. They're the truth. The truth that was hidden behind love, buried beneath faith, and dressed up as loyalty. The truth I was never meant to see. The judge leaned forward, his tone measured. We'll hear these under submission. The sharp crack of the gavel echoed through the room as the court recessed. For the first time in years, Kody Brown finally lifted his gaze toward Mary, the woman who had once followed him without question. But what he saw now wasn't the soft-spoken, obedient wife of Sister Wives fame. What he saw was a warrior, a woman reclaiming her voice, her power, and her truth. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed and reporters swarmed the steps, hungry for headlines. Inside, the Browns sat in heavy silence. Everyone knew this was just the beginning. The oath had been taken, the silence broken, and in that courtroom, truth had finally arrived to collect its debt. When the courtroom doors creaked open again, all eyes turned as Kody Brown stepped back inside. Her footsteps echoed slowly, deliberately, like a woman walking toward a storm she had once run from, but could no longer avoid. She took one glance at Kody, the man who once called her his spiritual wife, who swore eternal faithfulness before millions, and then walked away. Mary's attorney, Abigail Ross, stood waiting near the witness stand, calm yet fierce, the composure of a woman who knew that the next few moments would shatter years of silence. Kody's voice was steady but low. "I'm ready," she said. The judge nodded. "Proceed," Abigail began softly. "Kody, earlier you said you found a paper showing Kody and Robin's names on the Coyote Pass title. What did you do after that?" Kody took a long breath, fingers clutching the sides of the witness box. "At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. Kody always told us we were equals. One family, one vision. I believed him." She looked down, a bitter smile tugging at her lips. "But when I asked him about it, he told me not to overthink it. Said it was temporary paperwork." Abigail's tone sharpened. "And did you believe that?" Kody hesitated. "I wanted to, but something inside me broke. Each time I tried to bring it up, he'd wave me off. Or worse, he'd get angry. He'd say I was being ungrateful, or that I didn't trust him." Her eyes flicked toward the judge. "Your Honor, I was faithful. I helped build that family from the ground up. But faithfulness without truth? That's not devotion, that's submission." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Even Kody's own lawyer shifted uneasily. Kody leaned forward, voice low and seething. "Kody, you're twisting my words again." Judge Hamilton's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Brown, you will remain silent unless addressed." Kody sank back, but the tension in his jaw was visible from across the room. Abigail pressed on. "Kody, during your years in that family, were financial decisions made collectively or individually?" Kody gave a dry laugh, one that hurt to hear. "Together? No, Kody made every call. He'd gather us in the living room, lecture us about unity and oneness, and then do exactly what he wanted." Mary lowered her gaze, remembering the same long nights, the same empty promises disguised as leadership. Kody continued, her voice trembling but strong. "He always said, we're one family, one plan. But what he meant was my plan, my control, my way." Abigail approached with a document. "Kody, is this the paper you found? The one that shows the title transfer?" Kody's eyes scanned the page, her face paling. "Yes, this is it. Kody and Robin listed as sole owners. And the date..." She stopped, voice breaking. "The date is the same week he told me to stop asking questions. He told me to have faith." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Reporters scribbled frantically, pens scratching over notepads like 1,000 whispers. "Your Honor," Abigail said firmly, "we'd like to enter this as Exhibit C." "So noted," Judge Hamilton replied. "The record will reflect it." Robin's attorney leaned in close, whispering, "We might need to clarify her role soon." But Robin didn't answer. She sat rigid, eyes glassy with tears. She knew Kody wasn't lying. Those papers had existed for years. She had simply prayed they'd never surface. Abigail took a step forward. "Kody, from your perspective, what did Kody's actions do to the family?" Kody exhaled, pain carved across her face. "They broke everything. The trust, the respect, the faith. We thought we were building a home on love, but it was built on lies. And when the foundation cracks, it doesn't matter how pretty the house looks. It'll never feel safe again." The courtroom fell into heavy silence. Even the judge looked momentarily shaken. "Thank you," Abigail said gently. "That will be all." But before the defense could rise, Christine spoke again, not to her lawyer, but directly to Kody. Her voice wavered, then grew stronger. You know, Kody, for years you told us to keep quiet. You said the world wouldn't understand our family. But it wasn't the world that destroyed us. It was you. The room froze. Kody blinked, stunned, as if struck by a blow he never saw coming. Your Honor, his attorney began. Let her finish, Judge Hamilton ordered. Christine leaned forward. I kept your secrets because I thought I was keeping peace. But peace built on lies isn't peace, it's silence. Mary's eyes filled with tears. Those were the words she had carried in her heart for years, the words she never had the courage to say herself. When Christine finally stepped down, the entire courtroom exhaled. Her presence had changed everything. The truth was no longer hidden. It was alive, echoing off every wall. Then came the next shock. The defense calls Robin Brown to the stand. Gasps filled the air. Robin rose slowly, her legs trembling. She had no more shields left. No more excuses. Only truth or the lack of it. Her hand shook as she placed it on the Bible. I swear to tell the truth. The defense attorney approached carefully. Mrs. Brown, can you explain your understanding of this property transfer? Robin's voice cracked. I did know about it. But Kody said it was just technical, that he was protecting our finances. He said he'd explain it to everyone later. Did you ever ask him why he didn't? She nodded weakly. Once, he told me it wasn't the right time. And did you believe that? Her eyes dropped to her lap. I wanted to. Mary studied her. The woman once painted as the favorite wife now looked fragile, almost haunted. A woman realizing how little control she truly had. Abigail rose again for cross-examination. Mrs. Brown, did you ever tell the other wives about these transfers? No, Robin whispered. Kody told me it wasn't my place. So you chose silence, Abigail said pointedly. Tears spilled down Robin's cheeks. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to lose him, like the others did. From the gallery, Christine's gentle voice carried softly. You didn't lose him, Robin. We all did. The judge struck his gavel once, his voice firm but low. Order in the court. But the damage was already done. The truth was no longer on trial. It was finally free. The truth was no longer on trial. It was finally free. It was done. The truth had finally clawed its way out from beneath years of silence, and everyone in that courtroom felt it. The air itself seemed to tighten, as if the walls knew what had just been spoken could never be taken back. Robin inhaled shakily, her chest rising and falling with the weight of everything that had been revealed. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, she whispered, her voice cracking under the strain. I thought we were defending our future. Abigail's tone softened, but her words landed like iron. Sometimes, Mrs. Brown, defending the wrong truth destroys more than it saves. Robin said nothing. Her head dipped. The tissue in her trembling hands was soaked through. Her mascara smeared like bruised ink across her face. The courtroom was silent except for her quiet sobs and the ticking clock above the judge's bench. Judge Hamilton sighed deeply and called for a short recess. The sharp sound of the gavel echoed like a closing door. Kody didn't move. He sat there, staring at the polished floor as if it might somehow open up and swallow him whole. For the first time in his life, his voice meant nothing. His family wasn't listening to him anymore. They were testifying against him. As Christine walked past him toward the door, she paused beside Mary. For a fleeting second, their eyes met, not as rivals, but as survivors of the same long, bitter storm. You did the right thing, Mary murmured. Christine gave a quiet nod. So did you. And with that, she walked out, leaving behind the man who had once stood as the center of their universe, but who now sat at the epicenter of a courtroom hurricane just beginning to rage. By the time court resumed, the room buzzed like a hive of whispers and tension. Reporters were typing furiously, lawyers exchanged glances, and the audience leaned in, waiting. Judge Hamilton returned to the bench, adjusting his robe with slow precision. Court is now back in session. Counsel, proceed. Abigail Ross, Mary's attorney, rose to her feet with calm, commanding grace. Your Honor, she said evenly, the plaintiff would like to introduce new evidence. A ripple went through the room. These are documents recovered from a family email archive, lawfully subpoenaed. Instantly, Kody's attorney shot up. Objection. These were obtained without proper notice. Abigail turned, eyes gleaming. Your Honor, the defense was notified 2 weeks ago. Their office simply failed to respond. Judge Hamilton leaned forward. Then let's see what's at stake. Proceed, Ms. Ross. The lights dimmed slightly as the projector came to life. On the screen appeared the first email, dated March 14, 2021. Sender, Kody Brown. Recipient, Robin Brown. Abigail's voice cut through the tension. We'll keep this between us. The others don't need to know until it's official. Too many opinions slow things down. The words hit like a thunderclap. Gasps echoed around the room. Even the judge's pen froze mid-note. Kody's eyes widened. He turned toward his lawyer, desperate for rescue. But there was no escape from this. Abigail clicked again. Another email filled the screen. If Mary or Christine inquire again, tell them the land is still being appraised. I'll do the paperwork next week. Christine's hand trembled slightly, remembering the very week she discovered the missing title. Mary's fist clenched in her lap, her jaw quivering. After years of suspicion, proof had finally surfaced. Your Honor, Abigail said firmly, these emails demonstrate clear intent to conceal property transactions from the other spouses. That is fraud. Plain and simple. Objection, Kody's lawyer barked. Context matters. These were family messages, not business correspondence. Abigail didn't flinch. Then let's add some context. She clicked again, revealing a scanned letter, handwritten, the ink unmistakably Kody's. Get Robin's portion settled first. She's the only one who'll understand why this must be done quietly. A sharp, collective gasp filled the courtroom. Christine lowered her head, shaking it slowly. Robin's face drained of color. Kody, she whispered, her voice breaking. Tell them it's not what it looks like. But Kody remained frozen, his eyes locked on the screen, his silence louder than any defense. Judge Hamilton leaned back, his tone cool. Mr. Brown, do you wish to explain these statements? Kody rose stiffly. Your Honor, these were family discussions. I wasn't trying to deceive anyone. Managing multiple households is complicated. Abigail cut in, voice firm as a blade. Complicated enough to exclude 3 wives from their own property decisions? You don't understand, Kody snapped. I was trying to hold this family together. If they'd known everything, there would have been chaos. Christine's voice came gently from the gallery. You created chaos anyway. The silence that followed was heavy, so thick you could almost feel it pressing against your chest. Abigail stepped closer. So, Mr. Brown, to clarify, you chose not to tell them? Kody exhaled sharply. I made the best choice I could for everyone. So that's a yes, Abigail replied, her tone cool. His lawyer objected. Argumentative. Overruled, Judge Hamilton said, his gavel striking once. The witness will answer. Kody's voice cracked. Yes. I didn't say anything. Not at first. Those words landed like a gunshot. Mary's eyes closed. A tear rolled down her cheek. For years, she had prayed for truth, but standing in its light didn't feel like victory. It felt like loss. Abigail turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't about faith or family. It's about deception. Mr. Brown used his loved ones as pawns to gain property, to gain control, and disguised it as unity. She clicked again. Another email appeared. From Robin. I second that. Let's just keep quiet. It's easier if the others don't ask too many questions. Robin's eyes widened in horror. Oh my God, she whispered. Kody's glare cut across the room. You said you deleted that email. Abigail smirked faintly. Guess she didn't. The tension was unbearable. You could hear the hum of the lights above. Judge Hamilton turned to Robin. Mrs. Brown, were you knowingly involved in concealing these transactions? Tears streamed down her face. I didn't mean to. Kody told me it was temporary. I believed him. Do you admit your name is on deeds others never saw? Yes, Your Honor, she said weakly. Kody's warning glance came too late. I believed we were protecting the family, Robin whispered. Mary's voice cut through the quiet, raw with heartbreak. You protected it by destroying it. The judge's gavel struck again. Mrs. Brown, please remain seated. But the damage was already done. Every lie, every secret wall Kody had built over the years was collapsing, brick by brick, under the weight of truth. Abigail calmly returned to her table. No further evidence at this time, Your Honor. I believe the facts speak for themselves. Judge Hamilton nodded. The court will recess for 10 minutes before cross-examination. The gavel echoed once more. As the crowd exhaled, Kody turned sharply toward Robin, his voice low and venomous. You weren't supposed to say that. Robin met his eyes through tears. You did worse, Kody. You lied to me too. And for the first time, The courtroom didn't see a united front, but two people unraveling beneath the truth they once swore to hide. Two people unraveling beneath the truth they once swore to hide. What unfolded next was nothing short of cinematic. A collision of truth, ego, and years of carefully constructed illusion finally collapsing under its own weight. "You told me everyone knew sooner or later," Robin said, her voice trembling as it sliced through the heavy courtroom air. Kody turned, stepping closer, not with affection, but with the quiet venom of a man cornered by his own past. "You expect them to forgive you now?" He hissed, his tone sharp, each word dripping with resentment. "You're as deep in this as I am, Robin. Don't you dare pretend you're innocent." The air thickened. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras clicked in rapid bursts. Every whispered exchange, every flinch of emotion was captured like the final act of a long-running tragedy. Across the room, Mary and Christine sat side by side, not as rivals or broken pieces of the same story, but as survivors finally breathing the same air of truth. They weren't smiling. They weren't triumphant. They were simply still. Christine leaned closer, whispering softly, "Do you remember when he used to say honesty was the heart of our family?" Mary gave a faint, knowing smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah, I just didn't realize he only meant his version of honesty." The bailiff called out, 10-minute recess!" The words echoed like the calm before a storm. People rose, whispering in shock as they filtered out into the hallway. But Kody didn't move. He sat staring at the stack of emails spread before him, each page a fossil of his deception, each line proof of a life built on selective truths. His fingers raked through his hair. "They were supposed to trust me," he muttered. "They always trusted me." But this time, trust had died quietly, buried beneath signatures and lies. Outside, the courthouse steps had turned into a media circus. Cameras rolled, reporters shouted over one another, microphones outstretched. Headlines were already being drafted. Kody Brown's secret emails exposed. Courtroom chaos erupts as sister wives turn against patriarch. And inside those headlines, the women who once revolved their lives around Kody's promises were now watching those same promises burn, not out of vengeance, but out of liberation. For years, truth had been whispered in shadows, softened by faith, buried under excuses. But now it was spoken aloud, under oath, in the one place Kody Brown had never expected to be held accountable: a courtroom. When the gavel struck again, the atmosphere had changed. The hum of the gallery fell silent. The light itself seemed heavier, dimmer, as if the very air carried judgment. Everyone sensed it. The next phase wasn't about proof anymore. It was about reckoning. Kody sat rigid at the defense table, his posture iron straight, his jaw tight enough to tremble. He'd spent the recess pacing, muttering half apologies to his attorney, but the time for charm was over. His eyes, once filled with conviction, now carried the cold panic of a man whose empire was slipping through his fingers. "Court is back in session," Judge Hamilton announced. "Defense may proceed with cross-examination." Kody's lawyer, Mark Dalton, rose, his movements smooth, rehearsed. The kind of confidence that came from years of defending impossible men. "Mrs. Brown," he began, turning to Mary with a measured smile. "You've described betrayal, deception. But isn't it true that your marriage has been unhappy for years? That this lawsuit stems more from emotional resentment than financial wrongdoing?" The room tensed. Mary's fingers trembled slightly, but her gaze was steady, cold, resolved. "I was unhappy," she said, her tone level but cutting. "But unhappiness doesn't produce emails. Betrayal does." Dalton smirked faintly. "So this is personal then?" Mary looked directly at Kody. "It became personal the second he said family meant equality, and then moved us around like chess pieces." Dalton raised an eyebrow. "So perhaps this is not about money or property, but about rejection. About no longer being the favorite." Abigail, Mary's attorney, snapped, "Objection! Argumentative." "Sustained," Judge Hamilton replied. "Mr. Dalton, mind your tone." Dalton nodded stiffly, readjusting his tie. "Of course, Your Honor." He took a few slow steps. "Mrs. Brown, you claim Mr. Brown withheld documents. Did you ever confront him directly?" "Yes," Mary replied, voice unwavering. "Many times." "And what did he say?" "He told me not to worry, that everything was in God's plan." Dalton paused dramatically. "And you interpreted that as lying?" Mary leaned forward, eyes blazing. "When someone uses faith to silence you, it's not guidance, it's control." The words struck like thunder. Even the judge hesitated, pen frozen mid-note. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Dalton recovered quickly. "Mrs. Brown, did you ever think of leaving on your own?" Mary smiled bitterly. "Every day. But walking away isn't the same as being robbed." The gallery stirred again, this time a quiet rumble of awe. Dalton blinked, throat tight. "No further questions," he muttered. Abigail rose gracefully. "Your Honor, the plaintiff recalls Mrs. Christine Brown." Christine approached the stand again, exhaustion written in her eyes but her resolve unbroken. She had lived through the pain once already today, but she would do it again for truth's sake. "Christine," Abigail began gently, "during your time in the family, did Kody ever discuss his intentions regarding the property with you?" Christine nodded faintly. "Once. I asked why my name wasn't on the deed. He laughed and said, 'You'll get your turn.'" "Your turn?" Abigail pressed. "Yes," Christine said, her voice hardening, as if fairness was a prize. "But when I realized I wasn't included, I understood the only turn I'd ever get was to leave." The courtroom froze. Even the air felt fragile. A few people gasped softly. Others simply stared. Dalton shot up again. "Just one question, Mrs. Brown. You've spoken against Kody many times online, haven't you? Interviews, podcasts, social media?" Christine smiled faintly. "Yes, because silence only protects the guilty." Dalton snapped. "And you realize those statements hurt his reputation?" Christine met his eyes without flinching. "The truth doesn't destroy people, lies do." Applause broke out from the gallery before the judge's gavel slammed down. "Order!" Dalton scowled. No further questions. Abigail leaned toward Mary, whispering something, when suddenly Judge Hamilton spoke. "Mr. Brown," he said firmly, "this court has heard from nearly everyone involved. But before we proceed to closing statements, I believe the jury and this court would benefit from hearing your own account. Would you like to testify?" The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. Dalton leaned in, whispering urgently, "Don't, it's a risk." But Kody's pride, the same pride that had built and broken his family, refused to yield. "I'll speak," he said. The courtroom erupted with whispers. Christine leaned toward Mary. "This should be interesting," she murmured. Kody rose slowly, buttoned his jacket, and walked to the stand. His movements were precise, but his eyes darted nervously between the judge, his wives, and the jury. He took the oath, "I do," and exhaled sharply. Dalton began softly, "Mr. Brown, in your own words, what motivated these property transfers?" Kody sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I've spent my life building something no one else understood. A family, a vision, a legacy. Every choice I made to protect it." Abigail interjected sharply. "Protect it from what?" "From your wives?" Kody's voice hardened. "From destruction. From chaos. They were pulling apart, questioning me. I was the one holding everything together." From the gallery, Christine's soft voice cut through like a blade. "No, Kody, you weren't holding us together. You were holding us hostage." And for the first time, Kody didn't answer. Today's story begins with a man who once called himself the leader of love, now sitting under oath, stripped of that illusion. Kody Brown's voice trembled with defiance. "I love these women. I still do," he said, his tone wavering between pride and plea. "But someone had to lead. Someone had to make the hard calls. And yes, I made decisions they didn't like, but that doesn't make me a criminal." The courtroom was silent except for the faint hum of the ceiling fans. Abigail Ross, Mary's attorney, rose with calculated calm. She moved with quiet power, the kind that doesn't shout but commands. "May I, Your Honor?" she asked. The judge nodded, eyes sharp, posture unbending. Abigail stepped closer to the witness stand, a stack of papers in hand. Her heels echoed across the marble floor like a countdown. She stopped in front of Kody, her eyes unblinking. "Mr. Brown," she began, her voice steady, slicing through the tension. "You explained that you made these decisions out of protection and love. But Exhibit B indicates an email in which you wrote, 'They don't need to know until it's official.'" She turned the paper toward him, the black ink burning in the light. "Does that sound like love, Mr. Brown, or control?" Kody's eyes darted from the screen to the audience, his jaw tightening. "You're twisting my words." "Then explain them," Abigail replied softly, her tone more dangerous than any shout. The courtroom leaned forward as Kody's mask began to crack. "It was complicated," he stammered. "If they saw the plan too soon, they'd panic." "So you lied to them," Abigail pressed, her words landing like hammer blows. I didn't lie," Kody's voice flared. I handled it by keeping it secret. I was safeguarding them. A ripple of murmurs swept through the gallery. Christine shifted in her seat. Mary's hands clenched in her lap. The judge's gavel came down sharply. Order. Abigail stepped closer, eyes locked on Kody's. Mr. Brown, do you believe your wives were entitled to know where their home and property were being assigned? Certainly, Kody muttered. But you didn't tell them, did you? He sighed heavily, shoulders sagging. No, not initially. Abigail nodded once, slowly. Then according to your own statement, Mr. Brown, you deceived them. That isn't leadership. That's manipulation. Kody's face flushed crimson. You're portraying me as some kind of villain. I was trying to preserve the dream. Abigail's eyes softened, but her words were razor sharp. Perhaps, Mr. Brown, the dream was never yours to manage. Silence. A silence so deep it seemed to hum. Even Judge Hamilton looked down, his pen hovering midair, as though the truth had filled every corner of the room. Abigail turned away. No further questions, Your Honor. The judge nodded. Mr. Brown, you may step down. Kody rose slowly, the weight of years pressing on his shoulders. He didn't look at Mary. He didn't look at Christine. He couldn't face the truth that now sat between them, heavy and undeniable. Robin reached for his hand, trembling. He didn't take it. For the first time, Kody Brown stood alone. The courtroom felt colder now, not just from the air conditioning, but from the aftermath of a man's crumbling illusion. Judge Hamilton cleared his throat. This court will recess until morning. Closing arguments begin at 9 sharp. His gavel struck once, a single sound that felt like an ending. As the women stood, Christine whispered to Mary, "He still doesn't see it, does he?" Mary shook her head slowly, her eyes glistening. He never will. Outside, the flash of cameras exploded like lightning. Reporters shouted questions. Microphones waved in the air. But inside those courthouse walls, truth had already been spoken, not in ink or legal jargon, but in the trembling voices of women who had finally found theirs. The next morning, the courthouse rose under a gray sky. Arizona's golden light was swallowed by heavy clouds, a rare, ominous calm that felt like the breath before a storm. Inside, every seat was filled. Reporters scribbled notes. Fans of Sister Wives whispered prayers or predictions. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It was reckoning. All rise, the bailiff called. The courtroom stood as Judge Hamilton entered, eyes tired but resolute. This court, he said, his voice echoing across the chamber, is now ready to render its verdict. Kody's attorney leaned close. Whatever happens, don't react. But Kody's fingers were already white around the table's edge. Judge Hamilton continued, flipping through his notes. This case is not one of land or property. It is one of trust. Trust given freely and violated knowingly. He looked directly at Kody. The evidence shows a pattern of concealment, misrepresentation, and deliberate withholding of financial information. In short, you deceived your family. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Robin froze, her hand covering her mouth. Kody blinked hard, face pale. The court therefore finds the defendant, Mr. Kody Brown, guilty of fraudulent misrepresentation and concealment of assets. The gavel struck once. For a long moment, no one breathed. Then Christine exhaled sharply, tears spilling down her cheeks. Mary stood still. Then slowly, quietly, tears filled her eyes. Not joy, not victory, just release. Kody's attorney shot up. Your Honor, we intend to appeal. You are welcome to file in due time, Judge Hamilton interrupted. But the verdict is effective immediately. Robin's sobs broke the silence. Kody, what do we do now? Kody didn't answer. He sat motionless, staring straight ahead. Abigail turned to Mary, her tone gentle now. It's over. Mary shook her head faintly. No, she whispered. It's finally beginning. Christine rose from her seat, her voice clear. Your Honor, may I say something? The judge nodded. Christine stepped forward, trembling but strong. For years, we believed our silence kept our family together. But silence doesn't protect truth. It buries it. Today, our voices were heard. Thank you for that. Her words echoed across the courtroom like a hymn. The judge nodded with quiet respect. Court adjourned. The chaos erupted again. Cameras flashing, reporters shouting, the sound of history being written. Mary stayed seated, staring at the witness stand that had seen lies, tears, and confession all in one breath. Christine placed a hand on her shoulder. You did it. Mary smiled faintly. No, we did. Robin stood at the back, mascara running down her cheeks. I didn't think it would end like this, she whispered. Kody turned to her, his voice hollow. It's not over, But Christine, hearing him, whispered to herself, "Yes, Kody, it is." Outside, rain began to fall, soft, steady, cleansing. Mary and Christine walked down the courthouse steps together, cameras swarming. "Mrs. Brown, how do you feel?" Mary lifted her chin. "This isn't revenge," she said firmly. "It's truth. Sometimes you have to lose a family to find yourself again." Her words became the headline that night. And as the rain washed the dust from Coyote Pass, the women who had once stood in shadows finally stood in light. Because sometimes justice doesn't end a story, it begins one. Sometimes justice doesn't end a story, it begins one.